let's talk about the big three. So obviously Apple, obviously Google, and with some distance, but still being the third and a little bit late to the game. But never count out Microsoft, I think. Well, I don't have a Surface myself, but it seems to be pretty interesting. And also for the new system, so Windows 8, for the first time in history, I think Windows XP fell under 50% of market penetration. Right. So there's hope that Microsoft.
Yeah, I think people finally have a real reason. I mean, XP is really kind of been deprecated anyway. But Windows 8, Windows 7 was a very nice operating system. Worked fine, came on new computers, whatever.
Everything's better than Vista, I think so.
Exactly. We're all happy to leave that debacle behind. But now Windows 8, you have this touch thing, and everyone wants a tablet. People are tired of carrying around 2 or 3 devices. And I gotta say, Surface, I'm not impressed at all. I think it's a strictly consumer device, and I get irritated whenever I think about the Surface. But when I go and review and check out what OEMs are doing with Windows 8 Pro on tablets and really innovating around hardware and finding ways to bring down costs but have a device that is more than adequate for any sort of content creation that students or teachers or administrators might want to do, now all of a sudden that starts getting pretty interesting. And whether it's based around Intel Atom processors or some of Intel's higher end processors, there's some really cool devices out there. I have a distinct feeling that my next computer probably going to be a tablet that has high-end functionality, and the same could, that's me as sort of an IT professional person, but I think the same could apply to students who maybe they've got a tablet at school because they're doing that through one-to-one, but then at home they have a desktop, and they've got their Xbox and whatever else. A single converged device. We've again talked about this before. A single converged device starts making a whole lot of sense. It's why e-readers are dead in the water.
It definitely makes a whole lot of sense. Do you think this is going... Well, it's probably not going to happen in 2013, but in the coming years, do you think, like, at least us in the developing world, and I mean, you and I, we are creators, so at the moment... I see tablets as a very nice consumption device, and I can do some sort of creation on it. But when I, not for writing really longer pieces, and I tried this a little bit, but even with Google Drive, I cannot really edit this on my smartphone. So on the one hand, we see smartphone screens becoming bigger. I just heard the news that Asus and Acer stopped their netbook production, so I think tablets kicked them out of the space. There's no need, or at least consumers don't want netbooks anymore, they want tablets. I am not yet at the point that I could do all my Work and all my stuff around a tablet. Not yet, but... Right. Maybe. Do you think we are coming to this one unified device, whether it might be a little bit bigger or lighter, so we can make some concessions about some form factors, but we are more or less doing everything, or will be doing everything we need from only one device? Or do you think for us in our society, I don't know, we easily say, yeah, it's expensive, but anyway, let's buy another iPad mini. Let's buy another whatever.
Well, Apple, for example, will always have its early adopters and will always have its religiously faithful. And they're going to wait in line for many, many days and get the latest device, whatever that is. But I think, actually, that the Windows 8 and the new movement in tablets from various OEMs, they're going to bring us these devices because we're already seeing that most of them have some sort of docking station. They have the ability to suddenly turn into a real computer. They have, at the very least, a dual core, like an Atom processor, but many of them have Core i5s, Core i7s, powerful processors. Intel's HD 4000 graphics are outstanding. Dell, for example, it's just an Atom processor on their 10-inch tablet, the Latitude 10, but because of the graphics and the Wacom digitizer that's built in, and the docking station, for $1,000, much more than an iPad, but much less than a laptop and an iPad and a smartphone and an e-reader. Yeah, I think we're really close. 2013, I think we'll see a lot of people, particularly more in the enterprise-y space, really in educational deployments. I think we're going to see devices that they can sort of one device to rule them all, so to speak.
And it was very interesting to see that Microsoft, for the first time in their company's history, they actually built hardware.
Right.
Whether this might be, or at least in this first version, a big success or not, but it's a pretty bold move. On the other hand, also, we are both owners, I think, of the Nexus 4. And Google, on the other hand, then also for the smartphone space, setting the standard what they want to be a Jelly Bean smartphone and what it needs to be capable of. And of course, in the States, we don't have LTE here anyway. We have something similar, but for me, it's not really a big flaw of this phone not being fully LTE or I find it actually a pretty nice phone.
It's the best phone I've had so far, and I tend to go through phones like I go through candy. I think that the biggest story in that, though, especially as it relates to the educational space, is that all of a sudden now we've got a device that we bought unlocked, deployed en masse. We want to start talking about students having a device with them all the time. Maybe it doesn't need to be a tablet. Maybe it really should be a device that can be connected to the internet all the time. There's significant implications for something like that for what one-to-one can become. And, if students, I think it'll probably end up being more likely a smaller tablet, something inexpensive, but Google is pushing forward this idea that it doesn't need to come from an OEM specifically. It doesn't need to be tied to a carrier, which I know is less of a deal in Europe, but certainly here in the States, not.
But for me, it was a deal that for $300 I could buy an unlocked phone, a smartphone, and having the newest Android operating system. So it was actually a big part of the buying decision whether to buy an iPhone 5 or not, being, for me, buying the first Android phone, as I think, Android made made big steps forward, and I think it's now a mature operating system, and, there's not all this talk about apps anymore. That's now sort of Microsoft thing. Are there enough apps on the platform and in the store available? Yeah.
Right. You've got, as long as you have Evernote, you're pretty solid. And, I think if we look at the Nexus 7, for example, that's the sort of device that could be deployed to a whole lot of students very, very quickly, big enough to create content when necessary, perfect for consuming content on a desk, on the train, at home, wherever, inexpensive enough that parents can be part of paying for it, the students can pay for it, that schools can pay for it. I think we are going to see this movement. There will be this divergence, and there has always been this sort of dichotomy between Apple's premium hardware and software, and then a more mainstream sort of hardware and software that the majority of that every man can afford. And I think that is re-emerging. When we had this sort of spate of very expensive, very big Android tablets that nobody wanted because they weren't as cool as the iPad that was just as big. Yeah. Now all of a sudden we've got this idea that, hey, maybe students should be able to just, in their backpack with their, a book and a couple textbooks and their pencil and pen, they should be able to toss in a little tablet too, something that's more disposable even than this precious iPad. Whenever I still see, like second graders running around with iPads in a classroom, and it pains me because, one, they don't need it, and two, these things get broken. There's a lot of these things. We've seen some of these early deployments. They get broken really easily. I don't care how strong the Gorilla Glass is. When a third grader gets a hold of one, bad things happen. And I've got enough tablets in my house floating around and enough kids floating around that I watch it firsthand. I think that we're going to see an evolution away from Apple being this de facto educational tablet one-to-one provider, and now there's going to be a lot of potential providers, many of which may be running Windows because they're easy to manage. We may see them running Android because now they can be had open, unlocked, cheaply, in a variety of form factors, and there will be the Apple schools too, and that's all well and good.
Definitely, because I mean, even with all and all the good things you said and my few points, I mean, with the Mini, although Apple previously they said they would never ever build a 7-inch tablet, so but apparently, I mean, they are following the market, or of course trying to be like forward thinking and ahead of us normal consumers, but apparently, at least at the moment, it's what the market wanted, a 7-inch tablet. So
absolutely.
And I mean, the success for the iPad mini is there as well. I personally don't have one yet because it's not yet Retina, but next version. So, yeah. So never count them out.
That leave the really low end tablets like the Aakash. I mean, does that? I mean, I'm inclined to believe there is a market for that, but I think they'll be relegated largely, just as OLPC was in the first place, to developing markets. And
I think so too.
Worse.
I think so too, although it's a little bit of a pity because I find, well, of course they are all built on Android, one version or the other, usually not yet Jelly Bean, Gingerbread something, maybe a little bit upgraded. I would also think that even for schools in the US or here in Europe, if you want to hand out tablets to whole classes, why does it need to be an iPad, iPad mini, or expensive Android tablet? So why not a $50 Aakash? But I don't know, maybe we are too consumer oriented, or we want those big brands maybe, or I don't know really what is the exact.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's really unfortunate because you could get these devices in every kid's hands without any issue. Even Intel's study book, it starts at $200, ruggedized, perfect for students. And the Aakash, whether it's ruggedized or not, it's so cheap. Who cares? And so students could have access to information readily, and yet as a society. Oh, it's not an Apple?
That's something for Africa, for India. Yeah, that's great.
Yes.
Let them also have their tablets.
Right. Yay, it's bridge the digital divide. Good for them. That's so sweet. Yeah, and it's nonsense, and it's a bias that costs taxpayers a lot of money. And the number, the millions of dollars that have been spent already on iPad deployments, when really students are getting on the internet and they're using some apps that relate hopefully to education. That's what these things have been used for traditionally. If you're in a setting, maybe you're in high school and you need a tablet because you want to do content creation, well, great. Go out and buy deploy to the students who are for whom it's relevant. Deploy some high-end Windows 8 tablets and let them do their content creation. That's fine. But en masse, we still. I really sincerely hope that 2013 is a point where it doesn't have to be an Apple, because Apple has this education cachet and they have these spiffy products. I was going to say that Apple makes great stuff.
Undoubtedly, yes.
And my iPad's sitting next to me. That's all well and good, but there's a time and place for everything. And I think the one thing that as we've sort of struggled out of this recession globally, one thing we have at least learned is a little bit more sense of austerity, and so I'm hoping that can carry forward into schools. And they say, look, let's give students what they need to learn in the 21st century, and take away these skills and have instant access to information, learn to process that information, but it doesn't have to be a $500 iPad.
Great words. Hopefully somebody out there hears them or will hear them.